Hello, hello. I think we're live here tonight, and I've got Coach Leanne with me. And I believe, Leanne, we have Karen with us tonight for support. so,
Hi
um,
there.
if you're there, and I think we see some people coming on, if you can give us a shout out, please. We are broadcasting to YouTube and to Leslie's public page. So we welcome you. It's evening here for me in Ontario, Canada, where I'm tuning in from. Leanne, talk to us about where you're joining in from.
I am streaming in from the Phoenix, Arizona area, and I think you might be a tad bit colder up north than we are here down in the Southwest. What is the temperature in your neck of the woods right now?
It's not bad yet, but you all are, for those of you in, I think, the upper Midwest, are sending me this terrible storm and then these horrible, horrific dropping cold temperatures that you guys are getting anytime now. And then I'm supposed to be getting in time for traveling on Christmas Eve day. So it's all good for now. We're above freezing, but anyway, I'm just so glad that you're here. Oh, I see Karen there from Idaho. Hopefully the weather is stable and at least whatever. I don't even know this time of year. We had tornado warnings for part of the US the other night and just some crazy nonsense going on. So we hope that everyone's safe as well and warm wherever you may be. So hi, Karen, I see you there too. Thank you for being, as always, our background support. That's awesome. And she keeps us on track and helps us with all the questions that come in. So tonight's topic is, how do I hold it together even when our marriage is falling apart? So I think that's probably a big one. A lot of people that may be tuning in tonight have struggled with, whether you're currently married or have been married. So we'd like to hear from you all, recognizing that this is Leslie's public page. So the comments are not as private as they might be when we're broadcasting to other channels. But we do welcome you to join in the chat so that we can have some engagement and we can hear from you, whether it's comments or actual questions for Coach Leanne and I as we talk about this topic tonight. So, Leanne, what are your first thoughts on what it means to hold it together even when our marriage is falling apart?
As you were chatting, Jen, and I'm looking at the stream of comments, and it's cold all around the world. And so, I'm such a metaphor girl. Jen, you know that about me. And so I'm thinking about, how do I hold it together even when I'm cold? Even when I'm cold, how do I warm up? How do I do that? There's some tools that I need, right? I've got them right here in my space. Hang on. I just ducked. Hot tea. Okay. So I'm gonna nourish myself. I'm gonna have something warm to hang on to. This is just coming up for me. I'm just like going on the fly here,
Yeah,
because
go for it. I love it.
this is one of those things where, as we were praying before we gathered, we prayed that the Lord would give us words that would be inspiring, encouraging to those of you who are joining us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, then the other thing that I need is, how do I hold it together in the storms of life? Right here we are. Winter storms are going to ravage the US and Canada. What are we going to do? We can't control the weather, just like we can't control our spouses and the choices they make. We can't. What we can do is care for ourselves. I have something else here, okay, that I always keep handy in my office. A soft, warm blankie for my lap, for my shoulders, for my heart, for my head sometimes. And so when I think of holding it together, even when our marriages are falling apart, I can look to nature, to God's creation, and go, okay, God, I need some ideas, because under stress, I can get a cloudy head and a cloudy heart and brain, and I can forget what I can do. What I can do. So I can grab something hot to drink. I can grab a blanket. I can call Coach Jen. I can come on and I can serve the women that I love and appreciate so very much. And I can learn alongside of each one of you. So that's what the immediate, like, what came up for me in the moment. That was it. That was it.
Well, that's huge. I love it because you've already just encapsulated and used that metaphor to show that we always have something we can do. So
Mm.
even when that storm is going around us, you know, you could see the people panicking on the boat, and then you know Jesus was sleeping really peacefully. We had choices. There were choices. And so we have choices as to what we can do to get warm from the cold, that we can hunker down from a storm. Always, not always the most pleasant of choices sometimes. And so we're real here. So we know that not always our choices are ideal or pleasant, but they're choices nonetheless that still give us power and agency over ourselves and as much over our situations as possible. So I really thank you for bringing that in, because I think we can apply the same way of thinking and the same gifts to our situations when our marriage might be falling apart or has fallen apart. So, as always, if you would care to generate some conversation in the chat for us, let's just hear about some of those sort of things that you do to empower you, whether it's in seasons of storm, physically, like realistically, or metaphorically. What do you do in times of storm to take care of yourself, to protect yourself, maybe protect your things, to protect your livelihood, protect your family, whatever it is that you do that you can take control of, that's within your power. I'd love to hear some of that, where you can take some agency over that situation. So as we keep going on about this, because I think it's important to recognize, as I was just saying, that we do have choices in this. And in order to have choices, you guys will always hear me talk about this, we have to have awareness, right? Leanne, we always talk about noticing things, creating that awareness. We talk about being aware of our truth. What is our reality? So when we can face that and do a deeper dive into it as to what that looks like, then I think we have greater capacity to know what our choices are, even before we have to make decisions. Just looking to what those choices are. I don't know. What do you think about choices, even, let alone the choices that we're faced with?
I love that. And I really appreciate, Jen, when you shared about even before the storm, we have a choice. So, those of you in the Midwest, we send lots of warm love in the North. So you have some choices that you're going to make, right, on how you're going to care for yourself in the storm. Are you going to go out? Travel is restricted. Are you going to do it? Are you not? Are you going to put chains on? All of those things, because we know the storms are going to come.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, in weather, we can get some warning.
Mm-hmm.
In our homes, when things are falling apart, we may or may not get a warning that things are about ready to escalate and things are going to fall apart. We talk with women all day long, right, Jen, whose lives are crumbling due to, some of the 5 A's that I call them. The
Yeah, I was
five
just
A's,
going to ask you about those. Yeah.
right? The 5 A's that can come up, lives can crumble. And so we love to empower women to prepare in advance. What do you need? What do you want to have in place so that when the storms come, because doggone it, they will. Life is hard sometimes, and we're sinful people,
Mm-hmm.
and marriage isn't perfect.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really stinky
Yeah.
and really awful.
Yeah. So I'm
And
seeing some good
so,
comments in there too, that, have a safety plan. And that's about, there's choices in that plan that we come up with. For those that were able to join us for the Conquer Conference, I'll never forget it. Because this is my philosophy too, but the way Lisa Turkhurst put it into words is just different than me, and it stuck with me, is we plan in times of strength for times of struggle. And I think that's part of our safety planning that those of you in Conquer have done as part of our Conquer journey. I've done it as a nurse in emergency planning. It's just what you do. You have a safety plan in place for your patients, for those that you care for, and that's part of how it is that we can hold it together in marriage situations, let alone storm situations. But I did want to touch on, you mentioned the 5 A's. So let's expand on those. Can you share those with us? And I'll see if I can type them into the chat here.
Oh, absolutely. So one way that we can hold it together is to say no to some things. And so the 5 A's that you want to say no to are addictions, affairs, abuse, apathy, and anger unbridled is what I call it. Anger
Yeah.
unbridled. And so these 5 A's, when they are present in a relationship, it can cause the relationship to fall apart. These 5 A's can show up in our minds, in the thoughts that we have, in the emotions that we feel, and then the actions that we take. They really can. And so so the first one, right? Affairs. We can have different kinds of affairs. They can be emotional, they could be physical, they could be relational, they could be sexual, right? We can say no and have a boundary to not letting into our lives something that would be destructive to our lives. And so, Jen, when you hear me share those 5 A's, I would love to hear, what comes up for you in that space.
Yeah, that really speaks quite boldly to me, Leanne. I really appreciate you bringing those up and reminding me of those. I sparked right up when you had mentioned it earlier. I'm like, oh, yeah, right. Because I love having a way to remember things. And predominantly in my world, that a lot of the women, not everybody, that I coach one on one are wives of sex addicts, porn addiction, multiple affairs, that kind of thing. So you've just talked about the 2 A's right there. And then, of course, it does form in cases of abuse, because with that comes manipulation and financial stuff and whatever. But so when we were talking about holding it together when our marriage is falling apart, I also want to talk about for those on the other side of those things, the anger or excuse me, the addictions and the affairs, maybe, is that you can have a reaction to those things. So I've coached a lot of women that have then struggled with their own as a result of all this trauma that's come in from betrayal or just the angst in their home. They now struggle with shopping issues, overspending, alcohol, overindulgence that way, food, gambling. Sometimes it can just be, too much of anything, I guess is what we would say, can become a problem, can become an addiction in and of itself, a way of numbing out. So I think when you and I, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when we're talking about some of these things to say no to, is I think the enemy really wants to come in. So not only is maybe our marriage falling apart by ways of addiction coming into our home already, but now the enemy's going to doubly make sure that family gets busted apart by tempting you as well with those maladaptive coping mechanisms because of the affairs and everything else that may be going on. The other thing I'll quickly mention with those women that I predominantly serve is there is the temptation, like you said, to go out, and there is the physical, the emotional, the sexual, those relational affairs that if it's been done to you and I need to feel loved and I'm sick of being rejected, where do I get that attention from? You may not even seek it out. It may just kind of fall into your lap and now you're vulnerable, right? Because the enemy's kind of let that happen to you based on what's happening. So again, how you can hold your marriage together is staying true to yourself, that big circle self that we talk about, and saying no to at least those first two things. That's what really, really stands out for me when you first mentioned those.
I appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And the addictions, the affairs, it can be so multifaceted and they can be sneaky. It can be sneaky. And like you were saying, we can numb and we can buffer with all kinds of things. It can be, like you said, addictions to shopping, all different things. I'm a thrifter. And when things are hard in my world, in my relationships, I find myself going out and thrifting. I do. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
catch myself and I'll pull up and I'm like, why am I here? What's going on inside of me right now? And this is something that we get to do. And so that awareness piece that we talked about here a little bit ago, how do we hold it together? What is it? It is ourselves. Sometimes our marriage isn't going to be able to be held together very healthy by just us, but we can hold ourselves together. We can hold our stuff together. Those are things that we can do. And
Mm-hmm.
so, we can, when I talk about the other three, the abuse, the anger unbridled, and the apathy, we could get very reactive back. I don't know about you, Jen, but I can have a very sharp tongue.
Mm-hmm.
And because I love metaphors, I can spin stuff and get kind of creepy sometimes if I'm not taking care of myself and if I'm not self aware that I am not holding it together very well. Can we just say sometimes we don't hold it together very well?
Oh yeah, this isn't about asking any of us to hold it together 100% of the time. Amen to that, Leanne. No way. You're right. We can't hold it together all the time. We're striving for as best we can. So we know times are going to happen when we fall short of that because we're human.
We
So,
are. And, and we really are. And so, you're here on this page because this topic resonated with you. Your
mhm.
marriage perhaps is falling apart. You're at a loss. You're wondering, one of my favorite books that Leslie wrote around this topic is this one, Jen. How to Act Right When Your
Yeah.
Spouse Acts Wrong.
Mhm.
If you have not, my friends, taken a look at this book, I just want to encourage you. But Leslie asks us in this book, she says, we start asking ourselves all kinds of questions when our marriage is falling apart. Why is this happening to me? Why should I even bother trying when I don't see any commitment or action on his part? There is no improvement. There is no change in my spouse. Why do I even try? Why do I even try? And so, ladies and gentlemen, we sometimes have gentlemen listening into this is a public page, but I would
Mhm.
like to know what might be some why questions. Why do you want to hold it together?
Yeah.
What about holding your stuff together is important to you? We would love to hear. I see the feeds going so fast. I haven't been able to keep up, but I'm curious to hear from. We've got just under 100 people here, and so right already live with us. So, what about holding it together is important for you? Why is it a big deal?
Mhm.
For me, like Jen, I'd be anxious to hear what you have to say. But for me, why is it important for me to hold it together? Because I know it's good for me.
Yeah.
I know it's good for my growth. I believe that, how you were talking about plan in times of, how did you say it?
What Lisa is Lisa's quote. She plans in times of strength for times of struggle.
Struggle, right? And so for me, I know that I have agency and I have strength. And I also know that I struggle. And I don't make the best decisions when I am struggling. So I'm
Mhm.
going to use the strength that I have
That's right.
when I am holding it together. And I'm going to build my building blocks of holding it together so I can plan to show up as the best me.
Yeah. And I think during that time of strength, so the way I worded it before I heard the way Lisa does it is I talk about it. We plan in time. I call it peace time.
Yeah.
So it's when I'm at a peaceful time, when I'm calm, when I'm still. So that can be with me, or it could be with my partner, with my spouse.
Mhm.
So we talk about things when things are not escalated, not heated, either within my spirit or between us, so that we can kind of set these rules of engagement, so to speak. And I think that just gives us more opportunity to then go back to your question, Leanne, and like to see it. I'm seeing some things here in the chat about remembering, why am I doing this? Because your answers, I suspect, would be very different if you asked yourself in the heat of the moment when things are really already falling apart and you hadn't had time to think about this. If you just take a quiet moment to yourself with your hot cuppa, something, whatever it is that gives you a sense of peace and comfort for 5 minutes, and just say, okay, what's my why? Why am I here? Why am I holding it together? Why is it important to me to hold it together? And I'm seeing things in the chat about being obedient to God, right? So we have this relationship with God, and we want to be obedient to Him and show up as the best selves that He's called us to be. Is certainly a powerful reason for wanting to hold it together. And let me just pause here for a second, Leanne, because you kind of brought this up a few moments ago, and I don't even think you realized it. I want to be clear. We're talking about even as the title says on the bottom of our page here. We're talking about, how do I hold it together when our marriage is falling apart. Leanne and I aren't talking about how I hold us, how I hold the marriage together. That's right. Talking about me. How do I hold me together? Is that clear? That's what I'm talking about today. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, you know that. Hands down, all the
Okay.
way.
I just want to make sure to those that are listening, we can't promise anything because like Leanne, and that's what you said, we don't know what can be happening when there's those other forces coming in. You'd said something around those lines that just made me think, yes, that we are here just to focus on what we can do for us. So it may still be falling apart, but how do I hold me together? And the first thing is, before we get to the how, is to know why. Why do I even want to? What's important to me? So that my conscience is clear and I can have peace.
Amen, Natalia. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it does take practice, and I would like to ask this question of all of us here, how interested are you on holding your stuff together, even when it's spinning? How interested are you in holding your thoughts together, your emotions together, your attitudes, your behavior? For me, that interests me. I want to be a woman who exercises self-control.
Yeah.
I want to be a woman who's not going to lose her cookies, go nuclear when things are in chaos around me. Mm-hmm. And so, I just felt really led, how committed are we? How interested? Because, we can be committed or we can be interested. And perhaps you joined us because you're interested and you're hearing something in what we are sharing about holding yourself together with tender grace and mercy that makes you want to commit to do something more. And so, we're going to be given some tools. We're going to be given some tools tonight. And then, Jen, we have a coaching group coming up real soon here in just like 3 weeks' time. We're so excited. We have Empowered to Change, which is a 6-month group coaching program that we hold once every year. We meet 15 women with one coach live on Zoom for 90 minutes twice a month to do this very thing, helping you hold it together, helping you be empowered to own and appreciate the life that God gave you to live in the strength and dignity that He deposited in you that we can sometimes forget we have. Mm-hmm. And we have a few spots left.
Yeah, so not too many, but a few. Yes, we do. That's right. Yeah, I appreciate this so much, and again, that agency, that empowerment is so near and dear to my heart, because we may have been in situations where we've been victimized, but we don't have to stay in victimhood. And I think that's when we talk about having choices, even when they're not great choices. We do have a choice, and looking at programs like Empowered to Change does give us that choice. It does let us take some power back. It allows us to have some say over how the rest of our book is written. And I know I'm a powerful believer that we can have peace no matter our circumstances. We really can, because I think when I'm changing, the situation around me has to change, because my perception, if nothing else changes, my perception of the situation has changed. My strength and my confidence has changed. And that's how I hold it together in stormy times. That's how I have held it together in a rocky part of my own marriage. That's how many of you maybe hung on for as long as you did before you even got divorced. And that's how many of you are hanging on even today in marriages, and that you will see it triumph afterwards. But it's hanging on and holding ourselves accountable, I think, too, and having those people around us like we do in our group program, because there's 14 other women with you to help lift you up in those times of difficulty. So I think that's really powerful. I don't want to lose track of our 5 A's though. So we did. Yeah, we touched on the addictions, the affairs. The next one was anger. Not that there's any particular order to these, I know, but what would you say about the anger part? Why do we want to say no to anger? No, sorry. what
Yeah,
did you call it? The
unbridled.
anger unbridled. Why do we want to say no to the
Unbridled.
anger unbridled?
Yeah, because anger can serve us really well. Jesus got
Yes,
angry.
it can.
And I sometimes when I'm working with clients, Jen, when I'm working with women, the apathy piece gets really strong. And I want to get them a little bit of anger inside
Mhm.
of them. So anger isn't always a bad thing. The unbridled anger is what we're talking about here. This is the stuff that goes nuclear. So if you have ever gone nuclear, lost your cookies, however you would say it, can we just be real? Okay, that's part of my story. This part of God used my unbridled anger to wake me up to a lot of things in my own heart that had to be dealt with.
Mhm.
That I wasn't holding myself well, Jen. I wasn't. And so I allowed some anger to fester, and then I got bitter.
Mhm.
And so unbridled anger can fester and it can get bitter. It can also make us really indifferent, which is a very scary space to be when things are rocky. Okay, I'm just going to do that. And I'm just going to say that out loud is the indifference can be rocky ground.
Mhm.
And, and then the anger, then it can just come out sideways in all kinds of ways. It can come out into manipulation. It can come out, what are some of the words that I want? Well, trying to control, manipulate, sideways. What's the word I want? Well, sideways anger. I'm having a little bit of a brain moment.
No, I know. I'm just trying to think. I know what you mean.
Passive aggressive.
Sure.
Sure, that
Yeah.
one, it can come out. So
Yeah.
unbridled anger can ooze
It
out.
can
Bitterness
ooze.
can ooze out of us if we're not thoughtful and using the gift of anger. If we're using it to try and hurt another human as opposed to grow ourselves, then
Mhm.
we're using it in an unbridled, untethered way.
Mhm.
And it can be um, like a like Dave, oh, I don't know. Anyway, no, I'm not going to go into too many metaphors, but I can so easily go there. But I think that we can remember that when we tune in and we're honest, when we're honest, Jen, and we hold up a mirror, what's really going on inside of me. And this is something that when perhaps you're struggling with unbridled anger too. Of course
Mhm.
you are. It's understandable. You would be madder than mad at some of the abuse, the addictions, the affairs that are going on in your world. I hope you are mad about it.
Mhm.
What you do with that anger, how you hold yourself in that anger, that's your work to do.
Yeah.
And I know for me, Jen, one thing that has helped me more than anything with my unbridled anger is taking a breath, taking a pause, and giving myself permission to step away, to step back, to spend some time alone with myself in prayer with the Lord and getting some rest for my soul that I need in that moment.
Mhm. And I think too, it's again, I can't say enough. Just like you've already mentioned, that it is a God given emotion. Anger is, and it does serve us when it serves us well. In that it can be motivating. It means we've had enough, that we want to change something about our situation, and it fires us up to take action, and that's great. But it's sometimes the things that we do in that unbridled moment or moments that really get us into trouble. I call that the emotional hangover.
Oh boy.
I recently heard Leslie call it the stupid tax, which makes me just laugh because my husband calls it something similar, and I'm like, I like that. It just means we're paying for something later that didn't have to have been paid for, like the emotional hangover. We're now not only angry with what caused us the anger in the first place, but now we're paying for how we showed up in that. So that can be physically depleting. It's emotionally depleting. Now we're apologizing for things when really the focus should have been over here with this issue, right? Like all that kind of stuff. And so we want to be able to say no to that unbridled part when we are trying to hold it together. So not saying no to the anger, because that is a good God-given cue that something is wrong. So we want to listen to that, but we want to say no to the unraveling part that can come with that anger so that we can keep it together enough. But like journaling and any way of externalizing anger, anger is very much what I call a visceral sort of physical emotion compared to others, where it really does take it drains us. And it is good sometimes to take it out on a pillow. Do it in times like where kids can't hear you, shut the door, something. I learned how to scream in my head. And believe it or not, that's not that easy to do, but to have the same sort of release. But it took practice. But I learned so that if I were around my children when they were younger and something triggered me or was really upsetting about my situation, that I could just grip the steering wheel and just scream without disturbing them. I didn't want to cause trauma for my kids, but I had to get it out. I had to release it. So get out there, get some fresh air, do something, go scream, just stretch, stand up and do something that you can so that you have power over the anger and use it for its good skills and good energy rather than it letting take power over you. And I think that's the big thing as one of the A's to say no to. I think
Oh,
that's
so good. Yeah, thank you for that. And learning to scream in your head, that's powerful. And there's something else that I learned to do, and that's you tighten up your body all the way.
Let's
Hold
do it.
it for like 30, yeah, right? So it's you just tighten every bit. Tighten your butt cheeks, tighten your ankles, tighten your wrists,
Yeah.
tighten your neck, squeeze your elbows into your side as tight as you can, for as long as you possibly can, and then just let it go.
I shake it out.
And shake it out. And I get goosebumps every time I do
Yeah.
that. No one needs to know that I'm doing that. Okay, girls, you can tighten up your butt cheeks. Just saying, we can. Nobody needs to know that. Nobody needs to know that you're tightening up. You can squeeze your thighs together and let that tension go there. Let your body feel it. Because I say, in order to heal it, you got to feel it. We can't just dismiss it. We can't just dismiss it. And these are real tools. We're here to give you so much value and practical tools so that you can hold it together. It doesn't need to go out everywhere. It doesn't need to, Leslie talks a lot about vomiting everything on everybody. And so, if you're sick, there's a lot of flu going around. If you had to throw up, you would probably not do it at a dinner party on everyone unless it was, unbridled, right? You're going to
Yep.
and go to the restroom. It is okay to do that if you feel like you're getting all stirred up and you're not holding it together. It's okay to step away. Maybe somebody needs a permission slip. Back early in my coaching days, Jen, I would write myself permission slips. Leanne, you have permission to walk away. You have permission to pause. You have permission to say no. I had to make a new rule book for myself. Maybe some of you here in this space, to help you hold it together, there's some tools or rules that you want to bring into your life that are going to let you navigate these situations and circumstances with more dignity than you have in the past. Can I just say you have done the best you could with what you have up until now? And it's okay. There's no shame. Please do not wear a coat of shame around this. We've all done it. We've all blown it.
Yeah.
We can. And once we know a little more once we know better, we can do better.
That's right.
And Lisa said something else, and it's on the cover of her new book. When she spoke at our conference, she said, we can learn to love others without losing the best of who we are. And so maybe your marriage has fallen apart. You don't need to lose the best of you if it is. Somebody maybe needs to hear that in this space. And I hope you hear our hearts. It's crummy and it's hard, but you can hold it together for yourself, for God, for your children, for your community. You can. They
Yeah,
believe in
and
you.
you just really thank you for saying that because you just really brought to my memory of, and it's something I know Coach Elise has talked about before too, and I think it's really important. We didn't touch on this when we were talking earlier, Leanne, is about not losing our identity either in marriage.
That's right.
What I talk about, what Coach Lease often says is when we often see in marriage ceremonies the two candles, and we light the one and then we blow the two out. And I think we're also trying to. I think we need to still honor the two, right? And I think part of how we can hold it together even when our marriage is falling apart is also recognizing that we are not all of, like, all of us isn't our marriage. That's not all of me. I'm still me. And when you talk about that cloak of shame and stuff, that really gets deep and personal. Like, I am bad. You know, the marriage might not be great, but that doesn't mean that I am bad. And so maybe that's a really good time too to help hold it together, is remember who I am as the husband in this marriage, as the wife in this marriage, as the daughter of Christ, or as the daughter of the King, and you know, with Christ in my heart. I think that's really important too. That's a way to hold it together, is to really remember who I am. And I think we are all so much more than our marriages. And I'm not saying we don't value marriage here. Of course we do, or we wouldn't be talking about it. But we also have to recognize that as individuals, I think God still sees us as that, as his girl, as his one person. And he also loves us as a couple. So we have to remember who we are, and that might help us to hold it together too.
Oh, Jen, I love that. I often say there is the me, there is the you, and then there is the we. And there's three parts in a relationship. And so remembering that is so important. I
Mm-hmm.
was a me before I was a we, and so were you, girlfriends.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes when we put our marriage at the center of our lives and we work so hard to keep it together, to try and fix it, we read every single book. Behind this, you would not believe how many books are behind my binder, right? And so I have, I love relationship books. I love personal growth books. It's kind of my jam. It's my passion. I came from a destructive relationship from the time I was conceived. And so I've had to do a lot of work on knowing the me and then being able to embrace it in every relationship that I have, even the we. Even Jen, you came on, you're in Canada, I'm in Arizona. You are you, I am me, and together on this live, we are a we. But we're our
Mm-hmm.
own, individual, beautiful, unique, God created selves.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I just getting this picture right now about how beautiful that is. And, I'm looking at our screen. There is a border, there is a boundary around each one of our pictures. I can see where you end and I begin. I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a gift that we can give ourselves in relationship. And that's a way we can hold it together, is to stay who God created us to be and let others be who God created them to be,
Mm-hmm.
and give them the permission to be them. And then when they show you who they are, believe
Yeah.
them.
Believe them. That's
Believe
right.
them.
And then we know we can recognize ourselves and how it is that we want to show up. So I want to make sure we have time for questions here, because I do see some coming in. But one of the other A's that you had mentioned as one of the A's to say one of the five to say no to is apathy.
Yeah.
So what would you say about why is it important that we need to say no to apathy when we're trying to hold it together when our marriage is falling apart?
Mm. Well, apathy can cause us to just say whatever. And it can, what I mentioned, indifference, it can really breed and foster and cultivate a spirit of indifference. And one of the risks of indifference is not seeing the other person for who they are, for who God created them to be. One of the dangers of indifference is dehumanizing another person. And so with apathy, it's really easy to disconnect in unhealthy ways. And so we can stop caring. We can lose empathy and compassion. You know, if I can be real here, I've spoken with women who have said, "Oh, I've just prayed that my husband would die sometimes. I'm done." Or I just, there's stuff. We're real here.
Yeah.
This is because the pain is so strong. I don't even care anymore if he goes wherever and does whatever. I don't care if he goes to the strip club. I don't care if he goes out to the bar and stays out all night. I don't care anymore. And we stop caring for the person and we only see their sin, and we stop seeing them as a human created, beautiful, broken individual walking this planet. So that's part of it. What do you think, Jen, when you hear about apathy?
Yeah, I do think it's a very, very scary place to go. Really, because like you said it so beautifully. It's when we get to a position of not caring. But I think I think we think that's a good place to go, because when we don't care, then it doesn't affect us the same way. But I think we're wrong
Yeah.
in thinking that. I think that's a lie the enemy tells us, because when we do disconnect in those ways, we're missing out. We're missing out on all those other emotions that come with it. So I think another way to look at that, and where some people might get confused with what apathy looks like, is detaching with love. So I think we can still have a healthy way to step back from whatever is breaking our marriage apart, whether it be addiction, affairs, abuse, whatever may be happening. I think we can still detach from that, but do it with love as opposed to complete apathy. Because at least with love, we're still showing up in the way that Jesus would want us to be, while not continuing to allow the abuse or anything else going on. We can still have that empathy. We can still have that compassion. We can still at least be polite, even if that's what it takes, to have our manners with that other person. And I think sometimes with apathy, we just let everything go.
We do. There's a total lack of concern. I just looked up apathy in the dictionary. A lack of interest, enthusiasm, or concern. Right? A lack of the effort or energy to do everyday things.
Yeah.
Depending, listen to this, depending on another person to plan all your activities, having no desire to learn new things, meet new people, or have new experiences, not caring about your own problems or challenges. Apathy. Now you see, when I read that, I'm like, it gets me fired up. It gets me fired up to say, oh, no, I don't want to go there.
That's right. So this is why we want to say no to apathy, for all those reasons that you just listed. I mean, that's absolutely beautiful. Michelle says apathy is scarier than anger, and anger is awful. Amen to that. Completely different scenario, but apathy, when I used to manage a group of people, mostly women, in a nursing setting in the government, I had a staff of about 35 people, and apathy scared me the most in employees, because even when I had to deal with difficult situations and their frustration, say with staffing issues or a process issue or something, and they'd come into my office to talk about it, I was glad when they were mad, because that told me at least they still cared. They still cared. And I can work with that. And I thought, okay, good, let's go. Let's fix this process. Let's change the staffing issues. Let's make things better. But if that person who I knew used to be pretty fired up about stuff suddenly became quiet, that's not good. Not good for the workplace, not good for the outcome. And it's no different within our relationships, within our families, or within our marriage. So I agree with Michelle when she says that. I mean, anger can be awful, but I think apathy is even scarier. So I think it takes practice to detach with love. It really does. There is a fine line there. And I think only you know what that really, really looks like, because you know how you love. and how it is that you can sort of back away from maybe the things that aren't serving you well, but still do it in a loving way. Is it okay if we turn to some questions in the last 15 minutes or so that we have?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
do it.
Do you have the document up? I've got it here.
I don't. Go ahead.
Okay. No. All right. So a question is, well, one of the questions is, but how do I hold it all together? And I think that was one of the earlier questions. So hopefully with what we've been sharing so far has helped answer that, because we've talked about the 5 A's among some other things tonight. So here's another one. It says, when you tell us.
Actually, Jen, can I address that just a little bit?
Yeah, please. Yeah, go ahead.
I would love to give you some tips on holding it together. One,
Good.
step away, give yourself some time. It's okay to feel sad and disappointed and lonely. Allow yourself to feel. Mm-hmm. This is how, if you dismiss it, it's going to be like that beach ball we talk about. It's going to keep bumping you up in the nose. So give yourself some time to feel all the feels. Give yourself some time. Learn to say no so you can say some of the best yeses.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. It's okay to say no, and practice your no's and practice your yeses. Learn what it is important to you. Have your own opinions. Hold it together. Get to know you. What do you like? Do you know your favorite color? Okay. If you know your favorite color, put it in the chat. Put it into the chat. Do you know your favorite color? I am a blue and a green girl. The sky and earth girl. I love blue and green. Those are my two favorite colors. Tiffany, green. Awesome. Let's see. What do you know your favorite color? Do you know your favorite food? If somebody came to you and said, I will make you whatever dinner you want tonight, give me your grocery list. Could you do it in 3 minutes? Do you know what your favorite food is? Oftentimes we don't know. Pink, burgundy, blue, I love it. Purple, here we go. Red, awesome. So this is know thyself. That's how you keep it together. Know your preferences. Mm-hmm. Have opinions. And just because your opinion or your color or your food is different than somebody else's doesn't mean it's wrong. Just because you like something different than your husband doesn't mean it's wrong. Mm-hmm. We went out and looked at some furniture. Haven't bought furniture in 25 years. I know what I like. He knows what he likes. The challenge is going to be whether or not we can find something where they're going to meet in the middle. But if I didn't know what I liked, I would acquiesce, and I would be full of apathy and say, whatever you want, I just want something new. And then I would sit on it and I would be unhappy. That's my problem. That would be my problem. Mm-hmm. Let that not be said of our community here. Let that not be said of us. So know it. Yeah. And then here's one other tip that I'm going to throw out there for taking care of thyself is create a moment that you want to enjoy. Set it up. Create it. Create a memory and a moment. And that's something you can do right now. This holiday season coming up, you have an opportunity to create a memory or a moment that you want to have. Mm-hmm. And that will help you hold it together. Plan it. Write it all down, every little part of it, and then make it happen for yourself. Mm-hmm. Take action. Take a step forward into the best you. So I'll turn it back over to you now, Jen.
I love that. I love that. And I just want to remind everyone too, if you're just tuning in, that you can hear, Leanne just gave a great recap and some additional tips, but we've talked about this already, talking about ways that we can do, sort of self-care and taking responsibility for our own selves. Because like you said, I'm picturing when you talked about buying new furniture, and if we get apathetic about it and you say whatever, and you go to sit on it and it's like, I'm feeling lumpy. Like it's lumpy and it's not going to be comfortable. Now I have to sit on this couch for the next 10 years because if we just spend $1,000 on it or whatever, right. I'm paying for that now because I didn't speak up, because I didn't know what I liked, because of whatever. So I think there's a lot of good stuff here that you can see in the replay later for sure. And just again, before we turn back over to some of the questions, I want to remind everyone too that we're embarking on our 6-month group coaching program for women called Empowered to Change, coming up here, just starting in a couple of weeks. And there's still some spots left. That goes every other week. And we meet as small groups of 15 with the same group of people, with the same coach every single time. And it really is a powerful way to unpack things like this. So when we talk about how do I want to show up when my marriage is falling apart, it's also, we embark on so many other topics and so many ways that we are empowered to change whatever it is. So it could be a marriage situation, it could be a work situation, it could be a relational situation with somebody else, a friend, a family member, just something that we want to sort of take that power back and do something different in our lives. So I really want to encourage you to look into that as well. But let's turn it back to some questions here. Oh my gosh, we're running out of time. Here's another one. It says, when you say no to the 5 A's, like we've already discussed tonight, I agree. And that's why we've been separated for almost 4 months. He is asking me to go to marriage counseling now, but I have not seen a heart change in him. And I am growing immensely in my relationship with God and in healing. What is your suggestion about marriage counseling?
I'm so glad you asked that question.
Mm-hmm.
And
We
I'm
get
so
this a
proud
lot.
of you. We do get this a lot. I'm very proud of you for doing your own work.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes in destructive relationships, marriage counseling, couples counseling can do more damage than good. There are not many people who are trained well in order to actually help the marriage. Marriage problems like the 5 A's are not marriage. Or let me
Yeah.
rewind.
No, you're right. I
Five
know.
A's, you know where I'm going. The 5 A's are not marriage problems. They are character issues. They're character problems. They're behavior. Okay. They're not marriage problems.
Mm-hmm.
So we do not endorse a lot of couples counseling if you are in an emotionally destructive relationship. Jen, I'm going to put it over to you and let you add to that.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it really can become quite destructive to the point, too, sometimes where even the best meaning and well qualified people helpers out there, whether it be coaches, therapists, counselors, lay people in our church, pastors, they can often, we call it therapy induced trauma, and or institutionalized trauma, where even with well-meaning people, they give the wrong advice because they don't understand the type of relationship that we might be in, when it is abusive, when there is affairs, when there is pornography, when there is gambling, financial, anything like that going on. And it can actually become quite a bit more hurtful, not just for the marriage itself, but for you. Because you might start second guessing something, or now you feel like, okay, that was just, it's setting you up in your church family. It could be just, again, something we do recommend very much with caution. So I do love what you said, that she's taking quite a bit of responsibility in growing her relationship with God, especially when she's not particularly seeing a heart change in her husband. So I would say continue to do that, and not necessarily approach the marriage counseling just yet either, not in those circumstances. So there's a time and place, but I think a lot of us need to do our own individual work, healing and growth, before we can get there in that capacity. So another question here is there a time when the marriage is over, and in brackets, everything has been tried, both parties are now suffering and depressed, children are showing behavioral problems due to the stress in the home?
Is there a time? You know, Leslie often says, Jen, that when a marriage reaches that point, that the marriage has already died and the divorce is the death certificate. It's just showing what has already happened.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's your situation, I'm sorry. So this is something that, you know, we're not holding it together if we're not functioning. We're not holding it together. We're not staying well if we are depleted and deformed in the relationship, if we are not safe in the relationship to share our thoughts and our feelings, our struggles, if that is not a safe space in order to do that, then perhaps there needs to be some changes made. Maybe it's more individual work. Maybe it is divorce. We're not anti-divorce. We're not anti-marriage. We're safety and sanity and the health of you. God does not care more about the sanctity of marriage than he does about your safety. and the safety of the people in it, including your children, your
Mm-hmm.
husband, and you. All of you. God loves all of you, the
Mm-hmm.
beauty and the brokenness of all of you. And so do we. And we want to see you be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what do you need, sister? What do you need most? What matters most right now for you tonight in this space as you ask that question?
Yeah.
What else would you add, Jen?
I don't think anything else. I think you said it brilliantly. I think it's not a question that anyone can answer but you, in those situations to know. And that, yeah, that we've got lots too. If you happen to be a Conquer member, there's lots of resources available to you in those resources too, from the lots that Leslie talks about this, about, whether divorce is next in your future, or anybody here that's listening, how we can approach that and maybe navigate through those times. But again, even coming up with Empowered to Change, you're going to meet a lot of people. If you were to join in that group, we've got lots of women in there, that it's not just for married people, it's not just for divorced people, it's not for pending divorcing people, it's for anyone in walks of life. And you're going to meet all kinds that can lead us through, depending on what the particular scenarios are. So you might get support in that too, as you go through and find out from other really powerful people. Here's another
Yeah.
question. What's the best question to ask ourselves in the moment when we're triggered by any of the 5 A's?
Ooh. Okay.
One
You
best
know what?
question. You can only one best question. I think I have one.
Good. You go first. Go.
Okay, I love this question. Okay, so the 5 A's, for anyone that's just joining us, are, Leanne brought it up. It's what to say no to. Okay, what we want to say no to in terms of how we can keep it together when our marriages are falling apart. So Leanne mentioned we want to say no to addictions, to affairs, to unbridled anger, to apathy. What else did I miss? Was that it?
Abuse.
Abuse. Sorry, and abuse. So,
Yep.
what's the best question to ask ourselves in the moment when we're triggered by any of those things, plus anything else that you might throw in there? Is, I would say, who do I want to be in Christ? How do I want to show up? That would be my one question. And that should probably help you avoid some of those triggers, but I'm sure you can come up with something better.
Oh my gosh, that is brilliant. I mean, that's it, right? Who did God create me to be? And am I being her? Is the decision that I am, here's one, is the decision that I am about to make empowering me to walk more in the woman God created me to be or not? Is the decision, is the words I am going to say, are they honoring who God created me to be or not? Am I willing to observe myself and see how my well-being is being impacted?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's
Because,
it.
we're going to, no matter where we step, there's a fork in the road. There's a fork in the road. Every time we have a choice, like we talked about at the beginning of this, we can choose to walk down a road that will not empower us to be all God created us to be. Sometimes that's the easiest road. Can we just be real? Sometimes it's really hard to have self-control. I'm just real here. Sometimes it's really hard to be kind and let go of bitterness.
Mm-hmm.
There's the fork in the road. You get to decide, who will you be in this moment? And then, if you want to be angry, go all in, get angry, get fired up, use it constructively. That's okay. If you want to be sad, darn it, grab tissues, cry. And if you have trouble crying, go grab an onion, put it under your nose and get the tear duct going. Sometimes we need help.
Yeah.
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 And I don't mean, I'm not saying that but I've talked with many women, and I've had periods in my life where it was really hard to cry because I had stuffed so much. They had stuffed so much and had not allowed themselves to feel, or they've been told, they've been shamed because they cried.
Mm-hmm.
No, your tears, God collects your tears in a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
He sees your grief. This is a hard time of year for many, and it's going to be hard to keep your stuff together when stuff around you is falling apart. But
Mhm.
we're here for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen. And he is always here. We give him all the glory to
Yeah.
be able to, uphold ourselves. And it isn't easy. And that's when we do want you to reach out to your sisters, reach out to a trusted friend, so that you can still show up to that, the best person that you were called to be in those moments. Not perfect, just the best in that moment. Do the next
Oh,
right thing, as we often say. What's the next right thing for me to do? And I think that'll help. We're at the bottom of the hour. You have time for a couple more?
I do. I want to throw one more tip out there.
Yeah, please
And
do. Go
it's,
for it. I think this is a really
this
good
is,
topic, Leanne. Go for it.
oh, I'm loving this. And you and I, we could just sit here and just love on these ladies all night. But here's
Mhm.
the deal. Um, Slow down and let God's mercy catch up with you. Somebody might need to hear that. As I was, I've got I was showing a little how to do this mental brain dump before I come on and go live. And that was something that God really revealed to me is, let goodness and mercy catch up with you. Because sometimes we can run because it's hard and
Mhm.
it's scary. And so that's something that I would just slow down.
Slow down. I like that. Yeah, we don't have to have it all figured out. So that's another good way to, keep it all together, keep me together while my marriage might be falling apart. Okay. Another one. How can you speak to how much space to get to help give yourself time to reduce anger, or is that not even a thing? Can I still stay in the toxicity and expect to work on my anger? Yeah, I
Mm.
think you can. How much time and space? I think that's very personal. It depends on how close you are to blowing. How I often ask my clients in their intake, sort of as I'm getting to know them, how do you show up when you're angry? So that's part of what I said earlier in our call is recognize yourself, get to know yourself so you know how you already show up. Because knowing how you respond or react when you get angry will help answer this type of question. Because some of us will go quiet and small and just hunker away somewhere and stew and fester. Some of us will explode and blah, words come flying out of our mouths. Some of us will throw things. I don't know. Some of us will stomp around the room and slam doors. Some of us will go out and like blast loud music or whatever. I think we're all quite different, and knowing yourself will then also help dictate how much time and space you need before it really gets explosive to that point where Leanne mentioned it's unbridled, where we Leslie called it the stupid tax, or we get into that emotional hangover where we say or do things that we regret. What would you add?
I would add that relationships, um, or we are hurt and harmed in relationships, and we also heal in them. And so I know that some of my hardest relationships, staying in them at some capacity, some days are healthier than others, but working through them, they sharpen me. They sharpen me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you can work on your anger. I think that was the question.
Yep.
When
Mm-hmm.
you are in a toxic relationship, you're going to get a lot of practice.
Yeah.
And the anger is yours. Okay. And the
Yeah.
thoughts that you're having about the situation are producing maybe unbridled anger for you as opposed to healthy anger. And so we work a lot on our thought life in Empowered to Change. God's word says to take every thought captive and make it obedient to Him. We help you to do that. That has been one of the biggest tools that has helped me in all of my relationships, whether it be wifing, friends, colleagues, neighbors, my community, my grandkids, all that. What am I thinking about the situation?
Mm-hmm.
What am I thinking about this person? Am I seeing them through my hurt lens, or am I seeing them through my lens that is being healed? The choice is mine, which
Mm-hmm.
lens I'm going to pick up.
That's right. Yeah. And again, we go back to that choice. So again, our circumstances may feel like we don't have choices, but we do. We really, really do. That anger is ours. We own our emotions. No one can make us feel anything that we don't put into ourselves. So we can own that and we get to decide what to do with it. So thank you very much for that. Can you recommend how to love someone who continues to abuse and manipulate you? So that's a strong statement.
Cool. Yeah, that's really, I'm having like almost a visceral response. I wish that I was sitting knee to knee with you right now, and I would take my hands and I would cradle your chin, and I would say this to you: abuse is never okay. And I think you need to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Ever.
No.
It's never the answer in any relationship. The abuse has to stop. You can say no more abuse.
Mm-hmm.
You need to get a safety plan, girlfriend.
Yeah.
You can call 1-800-799-SAFE. That's in the US. I don't know if you're in Canada, or we've got women from all over the world in our ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Find a local resource for a domestic violence shelter. If you are being physically harmed, run. Get out of there. Call 911. Don't let it continue.
Mm-hmm.
You can call the domestic violence hotline anytime, 24/7, and they will walk through a safety plan with you. Get safe. Your safety matters to God.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. That's very powerful words for sure. And anything that you can do to protect yourself, whether it be physical or protect your heart from the emotional, that's how you can love someone in these types of situations when your marriage is falling apart, is through boundaries. Through boundaries. They are loving and they're protecting your own heart as well. So it could be a boundary from a physical distance. You create that space, or a boundary around your heart. So, but take shelter if you need to in a special, a safe place for you, for sure. Couple of more, if that's okay, before we
I'm
wrap
good.
up.
If you're good,
Yeah.
we start.
Okay.
Yeah.
What to tell him when he wants to go to marriage counseling, but that has not worked in the past. I don't want to go because it has not helped previously. We've kind of touched on that already, but
great words. Yeah, you just gave yourself some great words. I'm not feeling comfortable going to marriage counseling. It hasn't worked previously. I'm going to go ahead and work on me, and I hope you do too. I hope you do the same for you.
Yeah. You answered your own question, which I think is beautiful when that happened.
No, this is the deal. I love this, Jen. I love that you brought that up, sister. Oh, sister. We believe you have these answers within you. Sometimes we can get in our own way, and group coaching is the bomb. It's the jam for helping you get out of your own way. And we will coach you through having these empowered conversations, learning to speak up and hold yourself strong so that you can have empowered conversations. You can't control what the other person does. But when you lay your sweet head on the pillow at night, you're going to know that you've made a decision walking in the direction of strength and dignity. And that, girlfriend, is a life-changing opportunity for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh gosh, I love this. I don't love that we're going through this, but I love that we are able to have these conversations, that these people have shown up tonight, Leanne, and are just filling and flooding the feed with just some of their own stuff and some words of encouragement for other people. I just thank you so much for everyone that's being able to be here with us tonight. Especially when it comes to things that are falling apart in our marriages, especially when abuse is involved. It doesn't have to be physical. Emotional and psychological abuse is very much a thing. Financial abuse too. They are all forms of abuse that, and it's just, those are the bruises you can't see. I call, like, the emotional stuff, I call the bruises on the inside. And it's more challenging because sometimes that we're not as validated because people can't see it physically happening. They can't see the bruises. So they may not believe us or know that it's actually going on. So we do respect that here, and we understand what that looks like as well. So another question is, how do you keep trying when the respect is not there? Could be respect for, have you lost respect for the other person? Have they lost respect for you? Respect is a big one for sure. And it is hard to keep trying under the circumstances. So what would you recommend?
I guess I would say I would go right to the R step of core. You probably, if you've been around any amount of time, you've heard us talk about core strength. And the R step is respecting others, or taking responsibility for yourself, respecting others without dishonoring yourself. Mm-hmm. And so I want you to write that down. Karen, if you could type that into the chat. The R step is about respect, or first is taking responsibility for yourself. So what is it that you need? What matters most right now to take responsibility for yourself? I love the word responsibility. You are able to respond. Okay. Mm-hmm. Responsibility. Respect others. And at the same time, you don't dishonor yourself. What does that look like walking in tandem? You can do it. You can do it. Sign up for Empowered to Change. At least go take a look. LeslieVernick.com for those of you who are listening, /change. Leslie's got a video. It explains about group coaching there. She talks a little bit about the program that we embark on starting the second week of January. We would love to have you join us.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you so much for that. So someone's asking, what if it's emotional, not physical? I think we just touched on that. We recognize that it can be sometimes. I don't like to judge one person's abuse from another, so I won't say it's worse or better. It's abuse. It's hurtful. It's painful. It takes away from us. It destroys us, and it diminishes us. So we ask whatever it takes to get the help that you need to heal your heart and protect yourself and those around you. By all means, please do it. And this is one way to do that, is by joining us here, by surrounding yourself with Christ-like people, and by embarking on groups or getting the one-on-one professional help you need. That if it's outside here, get therapeutic or counseling services that will, really address some of those deep-seated issues that go on when abuse is involved. How do I say no more to verbal and emotional abuse when I can't control my husband's behavior?
I love that you said that. You can't control his behavior.
That's right. That's why I'm going, you're right.
You are so right. You can't fix him. You can't stop him. You can't control him. You can't make him do something. It's got to be within him. No one will change if they don't want to change. Mm-hmm. Mic drop moment. I remember the first time I heard that. Changed my life. I didn't believe it. Jen. I didn't believe it, but it's true.
Yeah.
No one will change if they don't want to change.
No.
And so take care of you. Mm-hmm. You can do that.
Yeah. And no is a powerful one-word sentence.
Yep.
So when you ask, how do I say no more to verbal and emotional abuse? You say no. Stop talking to me that way. Leave the room. Hang up the phone. Have a bag ready if you have to leave the actual physical space. But you let them know that that's not how you want to be treated. You teach them how you can't control. They may keep coming at you. You can't stop them. You can ask them to stop. Ask them. That's a powerful request. But the ultimate, when they cross that boundary of continuing to verbally abuse you, what are the action steps that you are going to take? There's no amount of punishment or anything you could put on someone else that's going to make them stop. So what is within your power? So like I said, hang up the phone, call the police, call whatever you need to do. That'll put a stop to it in the moment. And over time, it will hopefully put a stop to it forever, because they realize they can no longer treat you that way, because you're not going to tolerate it. Hard to do, and it takes a lot of practice, but those are healthy boundaries.
And boundaries are everything. And I think the thing that really hangs up a lot of women, a lot of Christian women, at least I found this in the last 10 years or so that I've been doing this work so intently, is follow through. Is the follow through. We can have a boundary. So the boundary for me, based on your question, would be, I'm not going to allow myself to be spoken to that way. I will remove myself from the conversation when the tension gets high like that. I'm just not going to allow myself to be spoken to. I can't stop them, but I can remove myself from the situation. That's something I can do. And then, girlfriends, here's the hard part. Do it consistently every time. Just like a child, when you're teaching a child to obey a new rule, right? That could be damaging to them. You follow through consistently every time they break that rule so they learn. The more consistent and complete you are in your boundary setting, boundaries on you, what you will put up with, what you will tolerate, and what you will not. This is something that I had to change, Jen, in my life. I am a woman who does not tolerate emotional abuse. That's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I am. So, therefore, what will I do in light of that? I will remove myself from the conversation. I can't stop them. I can't make them leave me, but I can go take a shower, go for a walk, hang up the phone. It's all scary. It's risky.
Mm-hmm.
When the pain of staying the same,
Thank you.
you finish it. I'm going to say the first part, you finish.
Yep.
When the pain of staying the same
Is greater than the pain of change. Right? That's when we change.
that's when we change.
That's when we change. That's, for anyone that's asking when it's time to leave, only you know when that is. Oftentimes we stay in these situations because the fear and the pain of changing is greater. But when we recognize that the pain of staying becomes greater than what the change looks like, that's when things switch for us. That's when the enemy no longer has that fear hold, stranglehold on us. And we are now open to more options. I'm communicating how I need safety in my relationship with my husband, namely unconditional and consistent accountability and openness after betrayal and deceit. He wants to change how much I need that or how that should look. I've asked for all the time. Am I being too extreme? Am I being reasonable when there's no trust? I'm so confused because I don't think I'm asking for much.
Of course you're confused. You aren't asking for much. Without trust and safety, a relationship can't thrive and heal.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop there and turn it back over to you, Jen. Thank you for reading that question. And
yeah, big side. Again, this is like a lot of what I deal with, especially when there's been betrayal involved. And he wants to change how much you need to know or how that should look. How does he have a say over what it is that you need to know or how that should look when it's your safety? You get to call the shots when it's your safety. And what we all need to remember, firstly us, when we're having trouble with this, but maybe let him know if he's open to change, which I'm hearing, I think you said there's some willingness there. So that's good. Let him know that this isn't forever. Okay. If I need to know every time you get back to the office, please know it. I'm talking to me. I've been through this. Okay. It's not forever. Once that trust, which is consistency over time, once you can believe his words, his actions match up, you won't need to know that every single time. It'll just naturally diminish on its own. Or when he does check-ins with you on a regular basis about his emotional well-being, how he's doing, you won't need to have to ask him anymore. He may be getting frustrated because you're constantly asking, well, how are you thinking? Like, how were you triggered today? What happened? Who was that woman at work, or what happened? That comes because you're still trying to establish what your safety is, if he's still going rogue, what his behaviors are. So that will settle with time. But in the meantime, you have every right to ask for what it is that you need to feel safe. If he doesn't want to oblige, then you have other decisions to make, because again, you now have to take the ownership of your own heart. And if you're not being made to feel safe because he won't comply, then you might have other things you need to do to make yourself feel safe. But that's topic for another day. But I hear you, and you're not asking for too much. I think it's really, that's part of what you can do to hold it together when your marriage might be falling apart, is standing up for what you believe in, standing up for what you need. stating, just using your voice, and don't let anyone stop you, okay? Because those that are feeling shame and guilt might be ones to want to squash you because it reminds them of their shame and guilt. Speak it up, girlfriend. I really do think so. Okay, one last one. Okay, that's here. What other individual healing things can be done? So as we talk about tonight's topic, which is how do I hold it together when our marriage is falling apart? What other individual healing things can be done? What else can we say that we haven't already mentioned tonight, I wonder?
Oh man, well let me hear. Let's see. Let me take a look at my
I want
notes.
to
See
hear
if
from the group too. Anyone throw it into the chat
yeah,
if you've thought of other things that we haven't thought. Tiffany mentioned switch the A's around and she says approve, appreciate, and accept.
there you go. And
Right?
become really aware. Become
Yeah,
aware.
awareness.
Don't pretend. Yeah, there you go. Read a good book. Start with God's.
Yeah.
Get into the word, claim a verse that you can repeat over and over and over again. Many of you know that I've worn a bracelet. This silver this silver bracelet, I've worn it for 10 years every day of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I claimed a scripture verse when some things were just really challenging for me. And it was, I will put on a garment of hope instead of a heart of despair. And I would move the bracelet from my right wrist to my left wrist. And I would do that multiple times during the day. And I would say that passage over and over and over again. That was super helpful for me. Doing a brain dump, getting it out of your head and onto paper, even every morning. Get it out of here. So, or before you go to bed, get it, remove it.
Yeah.
Your thoughts are so powerful.
Yeah.
So that's, and then my other one that I love is put cold water on your wrists. Run it under cold water. It's extremely calming for anxiety. Yeah. What else would you add, Jen?
Oh, just any of those self-care sort of things. So whether it's spiritual self-care is, staying in touch with God. So it's prayer. It's also meditation. It's quiet time. So I always call the meditation is for me, it's called shut up and listen, because that's when God downloads stuff to me. Because it's all fine and good if we just keep spewing out prayers, God, change my marriage. God, do this. God, do that. Whatever. It's like, sometimes maybe I need to shut up and listen for his guidance and for his wisdom. And that's something individual. That's something that can be done silently, even when it's coming at me from my marriage partner. I can still be talking to God in my head while that's going on, let alone in my own private space and time. I think, like you mentioned, journaling, getting it out there. I myself am not a big handwriting journaler, but oh my gosh, my phone is my best friend, and you know her name. Hey, you. And even if I'm driving in the car, I can dictate my notes. And I've got lots and lots of things in my notes. I keep scripture in my phone so that if I am in a particular moment, I pull up my favorite scriptures. So remember, we said earlier, plan in times of strength for times of struggle. I have scripture at the ready because I don't know about you ladies, but I cannot think of scripture in the moment when I'm in it. So I need to have some at the ready so I can go, oh, yes, there's my favorite go-tos. So having stuff like that, paste them all over your house, have them in your desk drawer, your makeup bag, you're on your dash of your car, wherever you can. Have a trusted friend that you can call or even just shoot a text to. If social media is a safe place for you. Sometimes there's funny things on there. You go into a safe support group, like whether it's the Conquer membership that we have here through Leslie Vernick and Company, or it's just funny cat memes. Come on, sense of humor.
Laughter.
Sense of humor. Laughter. And we do have a lot of laughs within our power and change. We're not all heavy.
That's right.
Because one of my biggest mottos, if we don't laugh, we cry. Come on. We have to have some lighter moments. And when you do it with women that get it, it is funny. Because we're mocking all of us at the same time if we're mocking anybody. So it's, it does really well. So anything that you can find humor in, please, those are all individual healing things that you can do to help hold it together when everything else around you is falling apart. And look to Jesus. He did it. He did it. In that storm, he slept quietly while everyone else was freaking out on the boat. right? So cat therapy and weekend naps, absolutely. Putting on the garment of hope, like Leanne said. Yeah.
Music is such a big one.
It's all good. That's all good. Well, listen, we went like
Way
an
over.
hour and a half. So I want to thank everyone here. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts before we wrap up, Leanne, before we say goodbye to everybody.
I think I'll just move my bracelet with you all. I will put on a garment of praise instead of a heart of despair, a garment of hope, whatever it is, the word that you need. That's my closing thought.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think tomorrow, are we on? I think we might be. I think we're on again tomorrow doing another Facebook Live and again Thursday as well. So we ask for you to join us as we talk about varying topics that we think are of interest to you. We do hear what you have to say to us and we do bring them into our topics. So it's always great to hear from you that way too, because we want to speak to what is meaningful to all of you out there and what we know has touched the hearts of people as they go through these times, especially through the holidays. So we'll be talking about that as the week goes on as well. So for those that won't be joining us anytime soon, we do wish you a Merry Christmas. And we will be around as we are all here in different capacities throughout the holidays. And we will see you otherwise in Facebook land. So thank you to my friend and colleague. I say a Merry Christmas and my kisses to you as well. And thank you to Leslie for allowing us the space to share with each other and to just share our hearts with everyone here. So thank you all. Thank you to Karen. Merry Christmas to you as well, if I don't see you later on this week in our Facebook Live. So goodbye, everybody. We'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Good night.